Welcome to the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast with me, Dave Roberts. Today I'm looking at citizen development at scale and how organizations can unlock innovation without losing control. Now, citizen development is one of those terms that can sound overly technical or even slightly corporate at first hearing, but the idea behind it is actually very straightforward. It's about enabling employees outside traditional software engineering teams to build digital solutions themselves. That could mean automating repetitive processes, creating internal applications, improving workflows, or connecting systems together using low-code or no-code platforms. What makes this movement so significant is that it fundamentally changes who gets to participate in digital transformation. Historically, software development was concentrated within specialist IT departments. If a team in finance, HR, operations, or customer services wanted a new tool, they had to request it, justify it, prioritize it, and then often wait months for delivery. The problem wasn't the IT team's lack of capability, the problem was scale. Demand for digital solutions grew faster than central technology teams could realistically support. Every department had inefficiencies to solve, manual processes to eliminate, and opportunities to improve productivity. Eventually, organizations realized that relying exclusively on professional developers was creating bottlenecks that slowed innovation across the entire business. At the same time, employees themselves became increasingly digitally capable. Modern software tools became easier to use, automation platforms matured, cloud services expanded rapidly, and suddenly people without formal coding backgrounds could build meaningful solutions with surprisingly little technical expertise. That's where citizen development really began to gain momentum. The important thing is to understand that citizen developers are usually not trying to become software engineers. They're solving operational problems they understand intimately because they encounter them every day. The person processing invoices manually each week probably knows exactly where the inefficiencies sit. The HR manager handling onboarding delays understands where friction occurs. The customer support lead can identify recurring workflow failures immediately because they experience them constantly. Citizen development allows those individuals to act directly rather than waiting for centralized delivery cycles. And that changes organizational speed dramatically. Innovation becomes decentralized. Improvements happen continuously rather than periodically. Teams become more self-sufficient. Employees feel empowered instead of dependent. And digital transformation shifts from being a large top-down initiative into an ongoing operational capability embedded throughout the organization. But this is also where complexity begins. Because the moment software creation becomes democratized, organizations face a difficult question. How do you encourage widespread innovation without creating fragmentation, duplication, security risks, or governance failures? That tension sits at the heart of today's discussion. One of the biggest misconceptions about citizen development is the idea that organizations must choose between innovation and governance. In reality, sustainable innovation depends on governance far more than many people realize. Without structure, citizen development can quickly descend into chaos. Imagine dozens or even hundreds of employees independently building automations, workflows, databases, and applications across an enterprise with no shared standards. Initially, it may seem productive because things are moving quickly. Teams solve immediate problems, processes improve locally, work becomes easier. But over time, cracks begin to appear. Different departments create duplicate systems, sensitive data gets exposed through poorly configured automations. Critical workflows rely on unsupported applications built by individuals who later leave the business. Integration becomes inconsistent, reporting becomes fragmented, compliance risks emerge. Eventually, organizations discover they've created an uncontrolled patchwork of disconnected digital solutions. This is often described as the modern form of shadow IT. Now, shadow IT has existed for decades. Long before low-code platforms arrived, employees created spreadsheets, macros, local databases, and unofficial systems to solve business problems independently. Citizen development didn't invent decentralized innovation. It simply made it more visible and scalable. That's why overreaction can be dangerous. Some organizations respond by locking everything down completely. Every workflow requires approvals. Every automation needs architectural review. Every experiment becomes trapped inside bureaucracy. Predictably, innovation slows to a crawl, and employees return to unofficial workarounds outside governed systems. The challenge, therefore, isn't preventing system development. The challenge is creating an environment where innovation can happen safely and transparently. The organizations succeeding here tend to treat governance differently. They stop viewing governance as a barrier and start seeing it as infrastructure. Good governance creates confidence. It establishes the boundaries within which people can innovate responsibly. It's rather similar to road systems. Traffic regulations don't remove freedom of movement, they enable large-scale movement safely. Without them, everything collapses into disorder. The same principle applies to software creation at scale. Effective governance usually starts with standardization. Organizations select approved platforms with built-in security, auditing, monitoring, and policy enforcement capabilities. They define clear rules around data usage, integrations, identity management, and lifecycle ownership. Crucially though, mature organizations avoid treating every solution identically. Not every automation carries the same level of risk. A simple internal task reminder is very different from a customer-facing financial application. That distinction matters enormously because excessive oversight creates friction that discourages adoption. This is why many successful organizations implement tiered governance models. Low-risk applications may require minimal oversight. Medium-risk systems undergo structured review. Enterprise-critical platforms remain under professional engineering management. That layered approach allows organizations to move quickly where appropriate while maintaining strong controls where necessary. And perhaps most importantly, it builds trust between business teams and technology leadership. One of the most fascinating aspects of citizen development is how it transforms the role of central technology teams. Historically, IT departments were expected to build and maintain virtually everything. They acted as the sole producers of digital capability within the organization. But modern demand for software, automation, analytics, integrations, and operational tooling has become far too large for centralized delivery models alone. This means the role of IT is evolving significantly. Rather than building every solution directly, technology teams increasingly act as platform providers, governance leaders, security stewards, and enablement partners. Their focus shifts towards creating the environments within which innovation can occur safely. That's a profound operational change. In many organizations, this transition can initially create tension because it challenges traditional assumptions about ownership and control. Some IT leaders worry about declining technical standards. Others fear fragmentation or operational instability, and to be fair, those concerns are not entirely unfounded. Poorly governed citizen development absolutely can create risk, but the alternative isn't realistic either. Centralized teams simply cannot satisfy every digital request in modern enterprises at the speed the business demands. The backlog problem is structural, not temporary. This is why the most effective organizations position IT not as a gatekeeper, but as an enabler. Instead of saying no, they create frameworks for safe experimentation. Instead of controlling every build directly, they provide approved components, templates, connectors, standards, and governance guardrails. And this shift often improves relationships across the organization considerably. Business units feel empowered rather than blocked. Technology teams gain visibility into innovation happening across the company. Risks become easier to monitor because activity occurs inside sanctioned platforms instead of hidden workarounds. Education also becomes critically important at this stage. One common mistake is assuming that low-code platforms eliminate the need for technical understanding. In reality, democratized development increases the importance of digital literacy. Citizen developers may not need advanced engineering skills, but they do need awareness around security, privacy, resilience, accessibility, process design, and data management. Without that knowledge, even well-intentioned solutions can create unintended consequences. That's why many mature organizations establish internal enablement programs. They create training academies, communities of practice, certification pathways, mentoring structures, and collaborative forums where employees can learn from one another. This cultural dimension matters enormously. Citizen development succeeds when organizations create shared ownership of innovation rather than adversarial relationships between business and technology teams. The healthiest environments are collaborative. IT provides the platform and governance foundation. Business teams provide operational expertise and problem-solving capability. Together, they create a distributed innovation model that scales far more effectively than either side operating independently. Now, we need to discuss perhaps the most important accelerant in this entire story: artificial intelligence. AI is dramatically changing citizen development. Generative AI tools can already create workflows, generate application logic, recommend automations, build interfaces, and assist with software creation using natural language prompts. The barrier between idea and execution is shrinking rapidly. This has enormous implications. Employees who previously lacked confidence to engage with digital tooling are suddenly able to create functional solutions through conversational interfaces. Software development itself is becoming increasingly abstract. People describe outcomes rather than manually constructing every technical component. In practical terms, this means citizen development is likely to expand far beyond its current scale. But AI also introduces new governance challenges. When software creation becomes extremely fast and highly accessible, traditional oversight models struggle to keep pace. Organizations cannot rely entirely on manual review processes if hundreds or thousands of automations are being created continuously across the enterprise. This is where governance itself begins to evolve technologically. Increasingly, organizations are embedding automated governance directly into development platforms. Security policies, governance checks, access restrictions, data classifications, and monitoring systems operate continuously in the background. In many ways, software is beginning to govern software creation. AI systems can identify unusual behaviors, detect policy violations, flag risky configurations, and recommend corrective actions automatically. Over time, these capabilities will likely become far more advanced, but organizations must also remain realistic about AI limitations. Generative AI can produce convincing outputs that are flawed, insecure, or unreliable. Citizen developers using AI-generated workflows may unknowingly expose sensitive information or automate processes incorrectly. Hallucinations, inconsistent logic, and hidden dependencies remain genuine concerns. This means governance cannot disappear simply because AI tools appear intelligent. If anything, governance becomes even more important as software creation accelerates. There's also a broader strategic implication here. As AI lowers technical barriers further, the distinction between technical and non-technical employees may gradually become less meaningful. Problem-solving capability, process understanding, and systems thinking may become more valuable than traditional coding knowledge alone. We may eventually stop using the term citizen developer altogether because digital solution building will simply become part of ordinary work across most roles. And that possibility changes how organizations need to think about workforce development entirely. So where does all this leave organizations trying to scale citizen development responsibly? The key lesson emerging from leading enterprises is that the future is not about total centralization or total decentralization. It's about coordinated autonomy. That phrase captures something extremely important. Teams need freedom to innovate locally because they understand operational problems best. But they also need shared standards, shared governance, shared security frameworks, and shared architectural principles to ensure the organization remains coherent and manageable at scale. The businesses succeeding in this space are building ecosystems rather than isolated projects. They standardize strategic platforms, they establish clear governance models, they invest heavily in enablement and education. They automate oversight where possible, and critically, they foster collaboration rather than conflict between technology teams and business users. Measurement matters too. One trap organizations often fall into is focusing purely on volume metrics. Numbers of apps created, number of workflows automated, number of users onboarded. Those figures can be useful, but they rarely tell the full story. The more meaningful indicators are operational outcomes. Are employees saving time? Are processes becoming faster? Is customer experience improving? Are risks decreasing? Is innovation happening more rapidly? Are teams becoming more adaptable in response to change? Because ultimately, citizen development is not really about software, it's about organizational adaptability. In an increasingly volatile business environment, organizations need the ability to identify problems, test solutions, improve operations, and evolve continuously. Centralized models alone struggle to deliver that level of responsiveness. Citizen development distributes innovation capacity across the organization itself, and that may become one of the defining competitive advantages of the next decade. But the final lesson here is an important one. Governance and innovation are not opposites. Poor governance destroys innovation by creating friction and fear, but absence of governance eventually destroys innovation as well, because uncontrolled complexity becomes unsustainable. The real objective is intelligent governance that enables experimentation safely. That's a balancing act modern organizations must master, unlocking innovation without losing control. Not by choosing one over the other, but by designing systems where both can coexist productively at scale. And that's where the future of digital business is increasingly heading. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. You can find more insights, show notes, and resources at www.inspiringtechleaders.com. Head over to the social media channels. You can find Inspiring Tech Leaders on X, Instagram, Inspo, and TikTok. And let me know your thoughts on citizen development. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in tech.